California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are joined by Ed Hernandez. He is a member of the California State Senate. He is chair of the Senate Health Committee. So, sir, I want to speak with you about the budget recently passed and focused on health care. As you know, California has the lowest Medicaid, Medi-Cal reimbursement rate in the entire nation. 50th out of 50. And last year there was a cut of 10%. There was a view that with the economy turning around, with Obamacare working in California purportedly, that reimbursement rate to providers would start to push up a bit.
Yes.
The governor said absolutely not, and it didn't happen.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And yes, we have the absolute worst reimbursement rates in the country, and my biggest concern with a number of influx of individuals coming into Medicaid, we're not going to have providers or enough to be able to see those patients because fewer and fewer providers are starting to take Medi-Cal. And yes, because of the 10% cut, because we had bad times and that was one of the areas we could actually save some money, the governor chose not to increase those rates, and that's one thing I personally was very disappointed that we didn't increase those rates.
What happened? I mean, if you look at the whole philosophy behind Obamacare, which California has bought into, I mean, Governor Brown seems to be a proponent of it, is you want to increase access. You want to create the ability for people to get care. But if someone's on Medi-Cal, and the number of providers is decreasing because they're not being paid enough of a reimbursement, it's the exact opposite of what you would think a proponent of the philosophy would accept.
I agree, and I will commend the governor for having a special session, having the bills to implement Affordable Care Act. But I honestly believe that this governor takes his fiduciary responsibility much more serious than he does healthcare policy, and you know, that's his decision. I disagree with it. And I believe that he really believes that his legacy is the financial stability of the state of California.
Which I understand, but it seems to me that if someone on Medi-Cal cannot access care because there are no providers taking Medi-Cal, where are they going to wind up? They're going to wind up in an emergency room. The emergency rooms cannot say no. They must take them. Who pays those emergency room bills? The state of California. So the financial legacy seems at risk, because, and emergency rooms are more expensive.
I agree. However, I'll just play devil's advocate for just a little bit. And I'm not defending the governor's position, but just even if we were to increase the 10% and increase it maybe a little bit more, if not significantly more, physicians and certain providers still don't take Medi-Cal. And here's the other problem is, even if they do, where the need is the greatest, they don't go into those areas. But there are providers or provider networks that do take it, and these are for example, federally qualified health centers who go to the poorest communities, and the advantage that they have is that they have what's called a wraparound money paid for by the federal government to allow them to continue to stay in business.
So I guess the argument goes that even if the 10% cut was reinstated, we wouldn't see more doctors join Medi-Cal?
No. Now, here's what I think we should do. This is what I think we should do. What we should do is figure out some mechanism that looks at the providers that take the most amount of Medi-Cals and that need to survive financially and give an incentive and pay them more. Because there are some physicians who take absolutely no Medi-Cal or very, very little Medi-Cal. So I think what we need to do when the money's available, because I'm going to argue with the governor that we need to restore those rates, to make sure that the communities that need the greatest need and get incentives, you know, to be able to put those resources to get more providers in those areas.
Is there a formula?
You know, there is. I think I've been working with the Secretary of Health and Human Services, obviously through my committee. I think there's a way to address that. Like I said, the federally qualified health centers have a wraparound mechanism that gives them more money, and they're doing okay. We just need to fill it in with more providers, but more importantly, more specialists, because that's where a big problem is. Specialists are fee for service.
But the irony behind this all, if I may say, is that, again, California has been an Obamacare success story. It's been such a success story, if you just look at the numbers, that more money had to be given to the Medi-Cal program because those that would have been eligible for Medi-Cal pre-Obamacare that then joined Medi-Cal after Obamacare, that's not covered at 100%.
Correct.
That's covered at 50-50. So there's kind of this hole that had to be filled because of the new enrollees. And so you would think that when we see what happened with new enrollees, that we would want to then decrease the size of the hole for those that won't be able to access Medi-Cal. It's complicated, but sir.
No. You're speaking to the choir.
I understand.
I completely agree. I was the one that advocated the most for those restoration of not only the 10%, but hopefully have more. I believe that we have to come up with a mechanism to increase access, increase fees that's outside of the general fund, or some kind of guarantee that there's a certain percentage of it for that segment of the population. So yes, I agree with you, but you know, this governor at this point, I believe his fiduciary responsibility is a lot more important for the state than dealing with that issue at this time.
At the same time, you do see the governor, I'm just playing it out, restoring cuts made to K-12 faster than you can say Rumpelstiltskin. Right. I mean, K-12 is getting restored very quickly. You know, a kid who's sick can't go to school. Right. And so, again, I keep going back to, you know, what's your analysis? You're in Sacramento. A sweet spot for K-12, it feels good. Right. But what about a sweet spot for a sick kid?
Yeah, I agree. But unfortunately, and I've seen this with a very short time that I've been in the legislature, is that when we're in tough economic times, the voters will vote to restore money for school and for education. But when it comes to health and human services, there's not a lot of public appetite for health and human services. Now, if we reframe it for children, I believe, yes, they'll look at that. But, you know, it's just the poor and the destitute that seem to get the worst, especially in tough economic times. And I am the absolute biggest advocate, especially when it comes for these particular services for the most neediest in the state of California.
When you talk about the neediest, oftentimes it's those that are infirm and staying at home. And a lot of folks would rather stay at home than go into a facility. Yet there was another provision that focused on overtime for in-home healthcare workers, and whether overtime should be granted or not granted for in-home healthcare workers who are often family members. Did the legislature win out on that one?
No, it didn't go up on that. I know that there's discussion about that potentially with MCO tax, which is the tax that's assessed on the health plans. But keep in mind that, yes, it's true that most of the individuals are family members. But keep in mind that if you don't have those individuals taken care of, then they're going to end up in a nursing home or in a hospital or in a facility that's going to cost significantly more. So I really believe that that's a sound investment to make sure that those individuals stay as if they can in the home setting.
But the governor, as I understand it, wanted to forbid overtime for these individuals, and the legislature said no.
Well, no, yes, we were fighting to restore that as well.
And the legislature, I guess you could say, won out on this one point. So we're talking as if it's doom and gloom in terms of the budget, but boy, sir, it sure isn't. I mean, what a difference a year or two makes. How was it for you, having been in the legislature since what, 2004, is that right?
2006.
2006. So you got in just before the storm hit. You know, now you're on the other side of the tornado. How does it feel?
I'll give you an example. You know, I think it was in 2008. We had a budget that we had to get locked into the state assembly, because I was in the assembly at the time. It was, we were nonstop till we came up with a deal. The problem is all we were doing was cutting then. It has just changed dramatically overnight. This time around, there's a significant amount of resources that have been coming to the state, but still, at least from my perspective, and I believe the majority of our caucus perspective, or all of our caucus, is we needed to restore even more and felt that there was more money available. The biggest disagreement between us and the administration was the amount of money that the Legislative Analyst's Office predicted that we had.
For surplus?
Yes, and the governor said, no, we're going to go with a lower amount, and the amount of people that were scored in Medi-Cal, and the governor just ultimately won out.
This Democratic governor is the best Republican governor I've ever seen. I mean, it's crazy. His name is Ed Hernandez. He is a member of the California State Senate. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's California Edition.
How many states have agreed to accept the Medicaid expansion under the Affordable Care Act? 22, 24, 26, or 28? 26 states and D.C. have accepted the expansion of Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act.
It's California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. We are joined yet again by two special friends, Walter Dominguez and Shelly Morrison. You surely recognize Shelley from her work on Will and Grace, Flying Nun, so many great sitcoms and movies throughout the years. Her partner in crime, Walter Dominguez, is here, of course, with us, her partner in life. And I bring you on not so much to talk about Will and Grace, although it was one of my favorite shows of all time. I want to talk about family and connections. I mentioned to you I was recently in Poland to try to rediscover my roots and was looking for a particular man who knew my grandmother's family and went through several layers of people who could not have been more kind to help me find this man, and we did. And it was life-changing. And that's the journey that you have taken, Walter, a journey that we can see in your film, done with Shelley, Weaving the Past, Journey of Discovery. Talk to us about connections and family.
Well, I think that Shelley has been talking a lot lately about how technology is so wonderful, the cell phones and texting and all this sort of thing, but at the same time we're in danger of losing that personal connection with people. And so what I discovered in making this film is how important it is to have those face-to-face interpersonal moments, those hours spent with somebody and listening and talking and letting things just evolve gradually rather than rushing through to the next email or the next phone call. And so going back in time to try to learn about my grandfather's early life, a man who was so good to me and I respected so much, meant so much to me. And when he died, I was devastated. I was a young man. And cut 2 years later, and I realized that I need to go on a quest to learn about him as much for myself as to learn about him. I needed to connect some things inside of myself.
Shelley, as Walter's partner, as Walter's spouse, you met him right after the passing of this giant, Emilio. So you've been on this journey with Walter as he sought to discover more about his grandfather, that man that he revered so much. What have you seen over the last 3-4 decades as Walter has gone on this journey?
I think we've both gone on.
Well stated.
We've both been on a journey, and it's Walter and I follow a very, very simple practice. We feel everyone and everything is sacred. And the kind of work we wanted to be associated with is work that enriches people in some way, either to make them laugh, or to make them feel, or to reawaken them, or to connect them in some way. Connections. I love that word, connections. And so we have been blessed that we are able to do the kind of work that doesn't add to the confusion of the world. There's enough confusion in the world. And we want to entertain people, but at the same time, we want to give them an experience. And it's universal. I don't care what your background is. It's universal. To feel, to connect. We see so many things on television or movies, explosions, and we become numb.
What's interesting about your quest to create those connections is through this film, it's not a traditional documentary, it's a docudrama.
It's a hybrid.
It's a hybrid, well stated. And you have decided to create that vehicle as a hybrid. Why? It's an interesting choice.
We had no choice.
Well, there were things in my grandfather's life as I began to learn more and more about him and the young men that he was associated with in Mexico and here in the Southwest. They all came together across the border. These were very idealistic young men, but they encountered many, many obstacles, and they had some very heartbreaking experiences. They were very dramatic, very hard to convey just through, and there weren't that many stills. One of the fellows, there was just the one photograph of him that our family happened to inherit through my grandfather. This young man gave it to him when he was 15 years old, and my grandfather hung on to that photograph throughout his life. And I lost my thread.
No, but the point being,
I want to go back to the photograph of that was the family photograph of Praxedis Guerrero, who was one of the most important revolutionaries who tried to save the people. And after the film, after we went back and forth, he did, to Mexico. One trip I went back with him and we went to Pachuca. Pachuca has this magnificent museum. And Walter had informed them ahead of time that we were bringing Praxedis' photograph to be placed in the museum because that's their hero, and it was the only photograph.
Wow.
So when we got there was all these people, and there was a reception, and they already had a place ready for the picture to go.
Right. Connections.
Connections. Monumental connections. And everyone who will come see this film will bring their own. And
let's talk about seeing this film, because we are on the verge of a limited engagement, which will be taking place at the Laemmle Playhouse in Pasadena. We'll put all the information on the screen. It's August 15th to the 21st. And what I really appreciate you saying, Shelley, is that whether you are of Mexican-American descent, of Jewish descent, it doesn't matter what your descent is, the story connects, because we are looking for those connections. And like you said, Walter, in this era of texting and emailing, it's so hard to build that human connection. And it's tough to see our children, metaphorically and literally, the only connections they're building are on their cell phones. And yet Emilio was building connections up and down Central and North America, one-on-one, person to person.
This, to answer your previous question, it came back to me now.
Please.
The reason we wanted to do reenactments was because there was so much drama in his life, and it was important to share that, put people in his shoes, in the shoes of his companions, so everyone could feel and see what it was like.
I want to ask you, if I may, because I see me in you. I am forever obsessed with my ancestry. I want to know every single thing about my ancestors whom I never knew. I heard someone ask me once, if you could meet your great-great-grandfather or your great-great-grandchild, who would you meet? I want to meet the great-great-grandfather. Most people want to meet the great-great-grandchild. What is it about us three crazies, Meshuggahs as they say, that we have such a
curiosity?
About.
Yeah, I think it's the curiosity about, I mean, we are all here as a result of people who came before us, and most of them, a gigantic proportion of them, we have no idea who they were.
None.
Zero.
For the Mexican American, the history's gone. For Jewish American, erased in the Holocaust, erased in the Mexican independence. I mean, erased.
Try the Inquisition.
Spanish Inquisition. You're a Sephardic Jew.
Right.
I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy how it can really.
It leaves a big hole, a big mystery, and the people with a lot of curiosity, and I think we're that way, want to know. We want to find out, and I think it's really important for people to do that. We learn about traits we have, and we realize.
Because all of a sudden you're saying, why am I so interested in this?
Right.
What does this have to do with the price of tomatoes? And you find out this other relative was
sold tomatoes.
Was an expert.
It sold tomatoes.
Exactly.
The film will be screened in Pasadena at the Laemmle Playhouse 7, Friday, August 15th to the 21st. You can buy tickets now or at the box office. Walter, Shelley, thank you so much for joining us. It is called Weaving the Past, Journey of Discovery. I'm going, you should too. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's California Edition.
What percentage of immigrants in the United States who originally came from Mexico live in either California or Texas? 37, 46, 59, or 66%. 59% of all immigrants in the U.S. hailing from Mexico live in either California or Texas.
It's California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance, and we are joined today by Greg Miller. He's an executive vice president with ICE Energy. He has brought us a block of ice because, as I understand it, through your company, America will see ice used to generate and create energy. Who would have thunk? Who would have thunk? Talk to us about the beginnings of ICE Energy and where we're moving.
Well, as you know, ICE has been cooling buildings for hundreds of years. We have taken a simple process and monetized that into a product that takes energy off of the peak period when utilities are constrained, and we move that energy consumption of air conditioning to the nighttime period.
But explain to us how you are trapping and collecting energy through ice. I mean, ice, well, I mean, we're in a drought in California, but that's another conversation. But, you know, presumably ice is abundant. And so how is it that, you know, now in the 21st century, we're using ice in an efficient way as opposed to what they were doing in the 19th century? How are we using it today?
Well, the parallel is the highway system in California.
Please. That
during the peak time of the day, when everybody's trying to get on the ramps and get on the freeways, the system is congested.
Right.
Very inefficient. If we could correct that system and open up those freeways like at midnight,
right,
where everybody could get on without creating a problem, that would be a good situation. What we're doing is the parallel is electricity during the peak time of the day is jamming up the power lines, the power grid. During the summer, it gets worse, and thus the thermal.
And so how does thermal energy work in the broadest sense?
So essentially what we do is we take that off-peak energy when it's available, cheap and clean, and we store it in the form of ice.
See, that's where I'm flummoxed. How do you store it in the form of ice? I mean, I think I'm kind of a bright guy, but I don't get it.
We extract the heat out of a tank. It's a 400-gallon tank. We extract that heat out with electricity,
okay,
turn it into a solid block.
A block of?
Ice.
You extract heat and turn it into ice.
Turn it into ice. just the water, the tank and the water.
Okay.
The water in the tank, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I followed you.
It fully freezes,
okay,
and we use that ice for the next day to relieve the constraint on the grid when air conditioning systems are running.
It seems simple. I'm sure it's not. And I guess I'm wondering what took so long. Is that a fair question?
I think it is. Our company spent probably 10 years perfecting the technology and really getting the market ready for the technology. The market in California is driving companies to deliver energy storage technologies so they can help the power utility change the way consumers consume energy without changing behavior.
And let's talk about California. We so often hear about companies leaving California for Texas or wherever it may be, but it's nice to hear that ICE Energy has come to California from the great state of Colorado. Explain why ICE Energy chose to relocate from Fort Collins, Colorado to Glendale, California.
Well, we started our business. We had to select some state in the United States when we were launching our technology. We selected California early on because of the environment, the need for air conditioning, the consumers and the utilities' interest in new technologies.
When you say the environment, do you mean literally the outdoor environment or the environment behind a desire to create clean energy?
There's both.
Okay.
The environment is a warm climate. For example, this year we've had 90 degrees every month this year, all the way going back to January.
Yes.
So a need for a block of ice like this can be used year-round.
And as you know, surely California, as a result of what we know as AB 32, is required to hit some very stringent goals in terms of using energy that's renewable. Well, I'm looking at a renewable, no? I mean,
yeah. So with Mother Nature, with solar and wind, the utilities don't necessarily have the ability to control those renewable assets.
Right.
So when you add thermal storage to those assets, we're able to take that non-peak electricity, store it in the form of a block of ice,
I'm blown
and
away.
use it for the next day.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about the early days. Obviously, you need clients. And as I understand it, you were able to get some clients early on. Talk to us about that process and then how the company's moving forward.
Really, the adoption came from the public utility sector.
Right.
The utilities in that sector are run by small government, city government.
Right. For example, Los Angeles, LADWP. Anaheim has its own. Glendale.
Pasadena, Burbank, Azusa, Riverside. So they are looking at ways to improve the efficiency of their grid. When they saw the ice storage tank and the simplicity, it's been around, it's a simple concept, it's not difficult to grasp. They saw it as an opportunity, and they all demonstrated it here in Southern California.
So when you contract with Glendale Water and Power, what happens? What are they buying?
They're essentially buying capacity reduction off their grid, and the way they do it is the storage asset that we manufacture, the Ice Bear technology, it takes air conditioning units, shuts those off during the peak time of the day so the utility doesn't have to serve that load.
Okay.
And it allows them to serve all the other load that they have without building new power plants or repowering transmission lines or distribution to serve that peak need.
Is there literally a product that you're putting at their plants?
This product actually is hosted at consumers, commercial and industrial, and we are currently working on a residential solution.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I admit it, I think it could really revolutionize the future of cooling homes, especially in a California climate.
And we see that as well. That's probably 50% of the market is residential, commercial being the other half of the cooling need.
So what does that look like? Are you there yet?
We will be testing the technology this summer.
So give us a sense of what that looks like.
It's very similar to an air conditioner system. It's about twice the size of the air conditioner. Half of the air conditioner is making the ice. The other half is the actual ice itself.
Okay, and so are we at a point where the economies of scale work? So it's actually an energy savings. I think about solar, for example. Solar is almost at a point where you can amortize it and it's going to be a cost savings. Are we there?
We are probably, for the residential market, we will be there in probably 1 year.
I mean, that's tomorrow. I mean, for solar, it took 30 years, 40 years, and I don't even know if we're there yet.
Well, we've been in the business for 11 years now.
So what will that mean? In 2015, what will be happening?
We will see a large utility make a purchase of residential ice bears in the marketplace and deploy those to demonstrate the ability to reduce residential air conditioning load.
But is the unit inside a home?
It's actually located out by the air conditioner. The air conditioner actually gets replaced with this thermal storage battery.
And can a resident buy it themselves, or would that not be appropriate yet?
It's not appropriate yet. Our business model is that we sell to the utility company.
I see.
The ability to reduce their capacity so that they don't have to invest in large power plants, transmission and distribution, which what that does is that translates into keeping their energy bills lower.
And so how will a consumer, a resident, wind up getting one of these units?
If their utility offers a program for thermal energy storage, the utility will actually call on them and ask them if they would like to replace their air conditioner with a thermal energy storage air conditioner.
And will the consumer purchase it? Will the homeowner purchase it?
It would be hosted and owned and operated by the utility, or it could be a program where the utility provides an incentive if a customer was to procure that asset.
And their bills start to drop?
Their bills will drop if they're on a time of use rate where they're paying peak prices during the peak time of the day, and lower prices.
Is that how it is generally now throughout the Southland?
Yeah, if you look at Southern California Edison, the more energy that you consume, the more you pay, higher price you pay.
It's like the Jetsons. I mean, I feel like I'm in the 22nd century. His name is Greg Miller. He is with Ice Energy. My name is Brad Pomerance. I want to thank you so much for watching California Edition.